Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this is the Talamanca Review. Let me just spike my volume there a little bit. I don't know why it's so low. Get a gain filter in there, and we'll bump it up. Oh, maybe it's in the general control panel. Hang on a sec. Always got to check that first. And indeed it is. Wow. Isn't that interesting how low it was there? I don't know why that does that. I'm just still learning the Mac. So you'll have to bear with me here. I'm still learning the Mac. And Mac is a fascinating operating system. There's no doubt about it. Listen, I'm not going to lie to you. I got a humdinger of a show for you today. And I stumbled across this Danny Jones podcast from 2 days ago called God, Aliens, and the Secret Behind All World Religions, Jason Jorjani interview. And he basically corroborates a lot of stuff that is in The Devil in Us. And I, of course, am very happy about this. For a number of reasons, as you can well imagine. Very happy about this. Let's start with a brief introduction to the gentleman. Thank you, AI, for doing that for me. And we'll take it from there. Not quite sure why that's not coming in. Hang on a second.
Expanded and published in 2016, right? So my first book, Prometheus and Atlas, which, by the way, it won the book award of the Parapsychological Association in 2016.
Oh, wow.
And this is relevant to the story I'm about to unfold for you, because right after that book came out, I, in a rather, I would say, meteoric fashion, became very well connected in the parapsychology community among, very serious researchers, like people at the Society for Scientific Exploration, of which I became a member, and people at the Parapsychological Association. A lot of the folks that you've interviewed are connected to those same people. And, we're talking like Russell Targ, who I got to meet there at one of the PA conferences, and Hal Puthoff, of course, is a prominent member of the Society for Scientific Exploration. So I became well connected in those circles, and Prometheus and Atlas was hailed in those circles as, one of the most important, or if not the most important, parapsychological treatise for a long time. Even though I was coming at, parapsychological data from the standpoint of a philosopher who was interested in the deeper conceptual implications of these things. So point being, I'm very connected to these people, and in a way that I think is also going to wind up being relevant, a lot of these same people wound up central to the UFO disclosure movement as it has now, begun to unfold. And this is the milieu in my life.
Okay, so there we go. I'm going to start to break it down for you. So point number one he makes is there's a profound overlap between the parapsychology community and the UFO community. Okay? So remember the general themes that Bob and I covered in The Devil in Us, okay? We basically break down everything that's happened since 1880. Now, my personal story is in the book, but that's extremely relevant because every single family has gone through the same things that my family has gone through in one way, shape, or form. because part of the agenda of what we're going through is the dissolution of the family, because we're easier to control as individuals than we are as family units. We have more strength. We're stronger when we're willing to sacrifice for something other than ourselves. Okay, that's a basic human characteristic. Human beings are most dangerous when they're committed to something else, not themselves. You know, and this goes right into nature. Okay, so very often when you hear about a bear attack in Canada, it's a mother with cubs. Okay, that's the most dangerous natural encounter you can have in the northern Ontario wilderness, north of Toronto, is coming across a 400-pound black bear female with cubs. That is your highest probability of being mauled by a bear. They even go over this in that incredible movie with Leonardo DiCaprio. I forget the name of it. It's a one-word title, but it's amazing because how my memory is working these days, because I can remember the story is about a Scotsman named Hugh Glass up in the northern part of Canada, way up around the Yukon. And anyways, at the beginning of the movie, there's a massive grizzly bear attack, mother with cubs, right? True story, too. That's actually a true story. So breaking up the family and stuff like that. But basically, and this happens to me a lot. Like, I will nail something completely, and I won't even know that I've done it because there's no objective measurement, right? So if you go in to do an exam in college, or you go to do a doctoral thesis, even if you're getting a PhD, your doctoral advisors and the board that you do the doctoral defense against, they will let you know how you did. But when you get into exploratory nonfiction, like The Light of Darkness, like Stardust Ranch, and like The Devil in Us, there are no markers. You're just out there in the wind, like an idiot. And this is why I get things like whatchamacallit, like Santo's friend, who the younger fellow who thought, oh, this is just, completely ridiculous what McDonald is saying. And I really don't take offense to that at all. I don't, because it is kind of out there, the material I write about and all of those sorts of things, but there's nothing else to really do in this field. You've got to just get out there, say what you want to say, and just take your chances, man, and see how it's going to all turn out. So, because there wasn't really what I would call a proper introduction to our friend here, I will do it for you and just read the bio from the podcast. But he's going to say some things that the only other place you've heard them is The Devil in Us. Okay? And there's some things he doesn't know. And to put this story together, you have to have a number of things in place. You have to have a kind of a journalist's mind for putting together timelines and stories and sources and making a case and a story with your evidence and how you're going to tell your story. And then when you get into this really sort of freaky stuff that I write about, you have to have the ability to interact with it, because that's what's going to give you the final understanding of what's going on, and nothing else. That's the only thing that's going to give you the understanding of what's going on, is your ability to interact with it, okay? So, Jason Jorjani is a philosopher and author who received his BA, MA, and PhD at State University of New York at Stony Brook. Dr. Jorjani has taught courses on comparative religion, ethics, political theory, and the history of philosophy at the State University of New York. Okay? But he's sort of way into this story now in a big, big way. So I'm going to jump around quite a bit and not waste a whole lot of your time here. And we're going to play little sections of this video so that you can understand what's going on. Okay. Okay, so he's going to give a basic introduction to paranormal science here. So we'll go here.
But let me tell you, I brought up in the course of that story this example of how it is that we have free will and that we can shift timelines and why nothing is inevitable. I was sitting in Lynn Buchanan's living room a few years back. You know, he was the chief trainer for the entire CIA remote viewing program. He's the guy who trained all the other guys.
Yeah, and I was gonna say Joe McMoneagle also saw his own death, didn't he?
Yes, that's right. That's right. So Lynn was involved with Joe McMoneagle in Project Stargate, and he was there through the changing of hands of the program from the CIA to the DoD. And he was the guy responsible for training the other ACE remote viewers. And he told me that, I believe it was sometime after he had already retired, and he was doing private corporate consulting. So companies, they still come to him. Companies come to him and ask him to do remote viewing for them. And so this is what he was doing. But the government actually came back to him sometime in the early 2000s. I forget what it was, 2003, 2004, somewhere in there. And they said to him, we want you to remote view the next 9/11. We want to know what the next terrorist attack against the United States on that scale is going to be.
When is this, by the way?
Early 2000s.
Early 2000s.
Yeah. I forget the exact year.
So probably right after 9/11.
Yeah, exactly. They came to him and they said, look, we understand you're retired, but, you know, do us a favor and remote view the next 9/11 for us. And he did. He put a team together and they remote viewed this event. And they said Islamic terrorists were going to approach the United States in boats that were full of biological agents, that it was going to be a horrendous biowarfare attack on the southeastern seaboard of the United States. So like in an area between, I think, like the Carolinas and like Georgia, like that area, right? And he said they were going to come in on these boats, and once they got to the coast, they were going to release this biological contagion, and it would be far worse than 9/11. Tens and tens of thousands of people would die. And he was able to give them the date down to the day of when this was going to happen. So here's what happens. On that day, the Coast Guard goes out, and they intercepted these ships. These ships were coming to the United States, and they did have these biological agents on them, and they were intercepted, and these people were rounded up.
Is this recorded?
I could understand why, if this happened, it would be classified. But this is what he told me, that he got confirmation that he had been correct, and that based on the intelligence he provided, the terrorists were intercepted.
And do you know when was this day?
I don't think he told me the date. I don't.
Do you know
think
what year?
I don't remember. He did tell me the year, but it was in the early 2000s. And this is what he told. And so here's my point, is that he saw this event take place vividly. It's a clear precognition of the future. So clear, he was able to volunteer the date, but he changed.
All right, so basically he's given you his bona fides there. So yeah, man, he's heavily invested in what we would call the occult sciences, paranormal science. He gets into another thing, but I've already watched this. Like when I need to do research, like YouTube gives you the ability to watch something you can speed it up 2 times, and that's what I do. And you have to super pay attention, right? This is like a 3-hour and like 59-minute podcast. So I watched about 60% of it at double speed. So 60% of it at double speed would be like an hour or so. But what I do then is I just get all my timestamps, and then what I want to share with you guys, I just share. Now, in The Devil and Us, a memoir of you and me, I make the thesis, along with Bob, my consigliere in this book and my multidimensional muse and multidimensional bodyguard, quite frankly, we make the case that, look, there is a grand religious deception going on here. Okay? Now, my job is not to hurt your feelings if you believe in God through a traditional religion. My job is to tell you, kudos for you for trusting your heart and your intuition and knowing that there is a higher power and wanting a relationship with it. The fact that you got duped is not your fault. I got duped. Everybody gets duped, okay? It's just part of the game down here. You get duped. Okay? That's all there is to it. Everybody's going to get duped. But the truth is, there is a creator. And once you get rid of the false religion, you have an opportunity to have a real relationship with the divine. And then all the magical stuff starts happening in your life. Never at your will. Okay? This is a critical thing you have to understand, because a lot of people throw the baby out with the bathwater when they realize that the scripture that they've been living by, whether it be the Book of Mormon or the King James Bible or what have you, is largely a load of horse shit. And it is. I'm sorry, it is. Okay? And it's not to say that the stories don't have moral resonance. I mean, I love the kind of mental and emotional dexterity that a guy like Jordan Peterson applies to the Bible stories. I mean, he's able to yoke tremendous meaning out of these Bible stories, but unfortunately, he doesn't understand their origin, and he doesn't understand that this human race has been under the yoke of a negative collective of extraterrestrial races for a long time. And coinciding with the publication of The Devil in Us, and we get into it in The Light of Darkness as well, but The Devil in Us really nails it down, okay? All of this information is starting to spill out now. It's like I hit it, the timing perfectly, okay? And it just, as this gentleman will let us know, Jason Jorjani, it all goes back to World War II, a little before World War II. But the early 20th century is when all of these breakthroughs were being made. And World War II was about something they haven't told us yet. It was not about the Nazis. It was not about the Germans. I mean, in part it was. There's a plausible historical narrative there with the Treaty of Versailles, the rape of the German economy, the decimation of the people. But the Germans have really been targeted by the negative forces on this planet, and I'll tell you why. The Germans are not what they're telling us they are. More than any other race on this planet, the Germans had the ability to take the human race out of the yoke of this negative extraterrestrial control. Okay? That's my feeling, okay? And the Germans are the closest physical form, the closest human form to the original humans, which I believe are Lyrians, okay? And the Palladians are descendant or ancillary to the Lyrians. No Lyrians, no Palladians. So the human form has proliferated, but the purest human form, humanoid form as we understand it, like us, hair, teeth, eyes, you know, it's coming up. The root of it all is the Lyrian. And the Germans are the closest thing to the Lyrian root on the planet. And therefore, that particular human form would have to be attacked because it has genetic correlations to its ancestry. And genetic correlation means you're going to get psychic data epigenetically. You're going to get psychic data. You're going to get cosmic data genetically through your deoxyribonucleic acid, okay? But what happened, we don't know what happened in World War II yet. We may never know, okay? We may just go to the next epoch. I think when we go to the next epoch, we'll all be able to figure it out just by direct consciousness perception. It won't be a big deal, okay? It's not going to be a hard thing for us to figure out. I'm sorry, I can't watch the chat right now, so if I'm not commenting or answering questions, it's because I've got two screens. I've got this guy going, and I've got OBS going on my two screens. So I can actually watch the live stream on pause and watch the chat on my own. Actually, yeah, I can. I don't know what I'm talking about here. Sure, I can. Why can't I? New window. I'm so limiting of my capabilities. Okay, so let's go live. There we are. Okay, let's pop this out. Pop it out. Pop out chat. Yep, there we go. Bring it over here. Shut this window. Bob's your uncle, and I'm ready to go. I'm so limiting. Hi, Kitty. Hi, Nick. Hi, Joshua. Oh, it seems as though Joshua is familiar with Jorjani. Okay. Multiple windows, Bruce. Yeah, so I myself was not familiar with Jorjani. He somehow slipped past me. But there really is something to what we were told by Erel in Interview with the Alien. I think she was largely telling the truth. And I think that there's a bunch of cover-up artists out there. Like, one of them that comes to mind is this complete fucking idiot, Doug Dietrich, the protege of Colonel Michael Aquino, who's been calling the whole Roswell thing a satanic ritual. But you got to understand, okay, so you just heard the guy explain how they prevented an Islamic attack through remote viewing, okay? You heard what I said last night. Satanic spirituality is psychic power. It's not really spiritual, but it's multidimensional. Now you have to understand the various levels of consciousness before you can properly define what God is. God is non-combative, non-dual, and in a completely different region than these dual worlds where we meet all the extraterrestrials and all the spiritual forces and all of these sorts of things, okay? It's a completely different thing. And unless you do deep inner work, you're not really going to come to any understanding of what God is. And that, sorry, I mean, some people can, I suppose, just by getting lucky or, you know, having an epiphanal moment or something. Yeah, Joshua is very familiar with him. So he just got his big break, Joshua. Danny Jones gave him a 4-hour podcast on Danny Jones, also known as the Concrete Podcast with a K. And he's very interesting, very creative, and very courageous with his podcasting, Danny Jones. Doesn't always ask the best questions, but you know what he is? He's a great starting point for anyone. Okay, so he can introduce new topics that people aren't familiar with, and it's very fascinating to hear him do this. Now, I'm going to get right to what I call my relevant material for this podcast, okay? And it's going to be very, very interesting to you. I promise you. Okay. So let's get going here and let's watch.
Not be non-human.
Okay, and see here, the devil's in the details here. They're manipulating us. The gatekeepers of disclosure are right now manipulating us by branding all of this non-human intelligence. There's an agenda behind it. Because what they want to say is non-human intelligence means demons and it means angels. And there's a particular sociological agenda behind that that's very dangerous.
Where is this coming from, this whole angels and demons thing?
Well, the fact of the matter is that, you know, I mean, as Jacques Vallée demonstrated in various extremely well-researched and carefully written books, Passport to Magonia, Invisible College, and as, you know, Zecharia Sitchin argued based on his understanding of Sumerian texts. I think actually one of the best books about this subject is a text by William Bramley called The Gods of Eden. The Gods of Eden, William Bramley. This guy started out researching the history of war and profiteering. That was his objective, to understand the history of how different elites throughout time in various cultures made money off of setting people at war with one another, right? Mm-hmm. And instead what he found is a history of alien intervention in human history. That he found that all of the major wars and other horrific events that resulted in massive loss of life, like the Black Plague, were engineered by these entities who show up and do various things. Like, for example, during the Middle Ages, the image of the Grim Reaper came from these people who were shrouded in black, who had some kind of a device that they would go around and spray the fields with. And whenever they would show up and spray the fields with this device, or in some cases, they would even walk through the towns and spray these things near people's doors, and everyone would flee from them. There were these really terrifying people whose faces were covered, and they were shrouded in black with these things that then became, you know, part of the image of the scythe of the Grim Reaper. And they were these entities who would come out of luminous objects that would ascend and descend into the heavens. And in fact, the visitations of these entities became so troublesome during the time of King Charlemagne that Charlemagne's court passed an edict against them. He called them the tyrants of the air. And he tried to arrest some of them, have some of them arrested, these people who were coming down from the sky, claiming that they were poisoning the fields and bringing pestilence and so on and so forth. And so anyway, Bramley goes to research war profiteering, and he finds alien, quote unquote, intervention in human history going all the way back to the days of the Sumerians and through the Middle Ages and so forth. And
How does he find?
Okay, so for those of you who've been with me for a while, I did the entirety of Bramley's Gods of Eden on air on a radio show I used to have. It wasn't video, like I wasn't streaming on YouTube, but I went through the whole book chapter by chapter, and I was actually corresponding by email with William Bramley, and he was simultaneously tuning in and listening to the show. He's in his 80s now, and he can't really, the sense I got was he can't really believe the effect his book had, you know, and how seminal it has become to a lot of people's understanding of what's going on this planet. But I also sent him a PDF copy of The Light of Darkness, and he never got back to me. I think it just scared the living shit out of him. Seriously. Okay? Now, so basically, when you get into Jorjani's work and you get into Bramley's work, you come into the control mechanism, okay? Now, it's my thesis to you good folks, my listeners here at the Talamanca Review, that no extraterrestrial race can outright come in here, take us over, and dominate us. They have to be working with a group of humans to cover their ass against the comparable foes who would stand up to them for doing this injustice to us, okay? So, ergo, there has to be a manipulation of our perception to get our consent, okay? And this, now you can understand why I keep hammering and hammering and hammering away at this idea in the Talamanca Review, and constantly reminding you that you have divine rights and that you are a divine being. And the moment a being becomes self-aware to the point that they can say, I am, even if that I am consciousness is only in the dimension you're incarnate in, meaning the physical, okay, you have rights. You reach a status in creation universally, not on this planet. I'm not talking about the fucking Magna Carta or any bullshit like this. I'm talking about you have rights and you can call in forces to adjudicate and protect you, okay? As long as you're in the right by cosmic moral law. And you can checkmate these beings that are trying to do you in, okay? Now, the human race has given its consent through our religions. Okay, and it's the Vatican, it's the Sanhedrin, and I suspect it's the Saudi Caliphate, the Wahhabis as well, with their black box there. Okay, now the whole black box analogy, that's purely me. I've never seen anyone take this tack on this material before. You know, sometimes I'm referencing other people, but when I do, I cite them. Now, Jorjani is a fairly well-respected academic, as respected as an academic who talks about the things he talks about can or will be respected in the academic community, which is not much. But he's got a lot more of a foothold in that world and that sort of like mainstream credibility than I do. Okay? But I don't care about that stuff. In fact, I deliberately write my books in a way to stimulate the awakening of your unconscious, not to prove a theory and bolster my ego and pretend I'm an academic with loads of footnotes and all kinds of crap like this. I don't give a shit about that stuff, okay? My only goal is to get my seeds planted in your consciousness and allow your curiosity to water them so that your awakening, or in the case of very clever fellows like Joshua Carpenter here, you're more corroboration for you, okay? So either the seeds are going to bloom in your imagination, and when that, you'll know when that's happening because you'll start to make super fast connections. Something will come in and help you connect dots. I don't know what it is. Could be different for everybody. Could be your ancestors, could be your soul family, and our ancestors and soul families are all different. It could be above that. It could be light beings that work with all human beings, irregardless of what soul family or genetic ancestry they have on this planet. Soul family is the extraterrestrial race or group of races that you come from, and ancestral connections are the human beings in your genetic line between lives on the astral, okay? And all of these things are part of the game. And the black box we were put into in the 20th century, specifically in the 20th century, and the reason they had to do it in the 20th century was if they were going to bring in all of the technology the extraterrestrials had given them, and this really is the plan of the secret societies, by the way. And if you haven't figured it out yet, let me be extremely explicit for you, okay? So when I talk about a small percentage of these people knowing that it isn't Luciferian or Satanism and that's just a smokescreen, just like Jorjani just said, the goal of the controllers is to keep us in the angel and demon narrative. He just fucking nailed it, man. That's exactly what I've been doing in all of these podcasts on the devil in us. It's very heartening for me to come across a podcast like this. It was only done a couple days ago. It's fresh off the YouTube presses, okay? So they want to keep you in the angel and demon narrative because the moment you figure out that this is all extraterrestrial, you start to ask different questions. And remember what I told you about the law of manifestation. When they introduce the law of manifestation to human beings, it's always at an ego level. I want a car, I want a new house, I want my ideal mate. Me, 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 me. I want to manifest. Me, 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 me. The spiritual purpose of manifestation is good questions, because questions always get answered. Think about it. If they're saying consciousness can manifest anything, and it could potentially manifest this new car for you, but if it can do that, imagine its ability to do something that has no material correlate, which is just give you a new awareness or a new perspective of something by answering a question for you. Those would be the easiest things for the fulcrum of manifestation in human consciousness to fulfill. And that's why they don't want good questions being asked. Okay? They don't want them. So, who's at the top of this pyramid? Well, let's listen to a little bit more of Jorjani, because he gets real deep into it. Let's go.
Find aliens. Where does he find aliens? What is his...
The elites in various societies that are engineering wars and pursuing a policy of divide and conquer for control over large populations on this planet seem to all be involved with these entities. They seem to all be like involved with what the Sumerians call Anunnaki, or what the Greeks called the Olympian gods, or with what the Bible describes as the Elohim, which, by the way, it's a plural. People think Elohim in the Bible means God. They translate it as God. It means the gods. Yahweh is Adonai Elohim, the chief of the gods, the same way that Zeus is the chief of the Olympians.
Okay, but do you think Dick Cheney was talking to the aliens, or do you think he just wanted to make a
I
ton
think
of
George
fucking
Bush
money?
was. I think George Bush Sr. was.
Yeah, but
Junior was a moron. We know that.
yes,
Junior.
But Dick Cheney, the guy behind
Cheney,
the Iraq War,
remember,
who owned.
Listen, Dick Cheney worked with George Bush Sr. George Bush Sr. put Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld around Junior. All right? Sr. told Cheney and Rumsfeld, take care of Junior. We have to do certain things. And, you know how Junior is. I need you guys with him. They were from George Bush Sr.'s administration. Mm-hmm. And when I say George Bush Sr.'s administration, yeah, and when I say George Bush Sr.'s administration, I mean also what he was doing to undermine Ronald Reagan during Reagan's entire presidency. Reagan did not want George Bush as his vice president.
I just have to say very, very quickly that for those of you, why is my camera not picking me up here and centering me? Drives me crazy. For those of you who have read The Light of Darkness, you will remember the chapter where Bob has the psychic interview with the CIA guy, and he sees the Council of 300 psychically, and behind every principal at the table is a man in black behind them. Bob didn't call them men in black like the Will Smith movie or anything like that, but that's how he described them. And he said they're interdimensional. They're not extraterrestrial, they're interdimensional. And their uniform is a black fedora, a black suit, and a kind of a white shirt and a black tie. And who do we know on the earth that dresses that way? Again, Jesuits and rabbis. Okay? So there's the control structure. And remember what I've been teaching you and what I've been telling you, that everything being done on this planet is being done through human agency. Okay? So look at it this way. When America goes in and takes over a country and does a coup, which we've been doing since World War II and really completely out of control since the end of the Cold War, there's always a sort of cover story of, well, we're helping these people. We're working with the liberation forces. So you go back to the 80s and you go back to the Nicaragua story. Okay, the truth is everybody was selling cocaine, including George Bush Sr. And by the way, Bob directly reported to George Bush Sr. and John McCain, who was George Bush Sr.'s right-hand man. Those are a couple shitheels right there. Cheney and Rumsfeld are shitheels, but McCain and Bush Sr. were the real deal, okay? And you heard what Jorjani says about Junior. He says, Junior's an idiot. He's not even in the loop. He's just like a frat boy, party boy, cokehead in his 20s and 30s, who became president because he's George Bush Sr.'s son. So Bob also described them this way. He said they're way, way smarter than us. Like they're operating 400, 800, 1200 IQ. Okay? No human being can compete with them. Bob said they have absolutely no feeling. None. No heart center the way we do. They're not empathetically connected to anything. Okay? Our heart center is our connection to life. Okay? You're walking down the street, you see somebody kick a kitten. You feel it, right? You're connected empathetically to the kitten. Because you're connected to life, which is God. Okay? Life is an expression of God. And that is your heart is the first clue that you have a relationship with the divine. Okay? And all these people who want to be tough guys and shut down their heart, or hard broads, I'm going to go out and meet my millionaire and I'm going to do what I have to do to get my life in order and get my condo, my penthouse in New York or Manhattan. When you live that way, you harden your heart, okay? And eventually you're going to cross paths with these dark entities, okay? Maybe not consciously, maybe under religious guise. Oh, the demons attacked me. It's not fucking demons. I'm telling you, I've engaged this shit writing these 3 books. What I went through writing The Light of Darkness is a book unto itself. I don't talk about it that much. I give a few examples here and there, but like, you go out and you meet this shit. And then, but after you do that, you go, it's kind of like getting over that first day at your new high school, like grade 9. You're so scared getting off the bus. What are the big kids going to do to you? And then the worst thing happens. A grade 10 comes and pushes you down. And you don't fight back, or you do fight back, but then it's all over and you go, hey, I can handle this. Okay? They're not going to kill me. They're just trying to humiliate me. You get a grip on it and you go, I can handle this. And it's the same thing with the paranormal, which is why I get, like this guy I went through the thing with the pulling back the interview in the Spooky Man podcast I did. That's why that pisses me off so much. He's my friend. I wanted him to go through this with me. Oh, no, Bruce, that's demonic. Okay? So, again, remember what I'm telling you. You will have paranormal experience when you're getting close. Why? They're trying to push you off the ball. They don't want you to know. They don't want the gig to be up. This is how they control us. Oh, Satan's going to get your soul. You're going to go to hell forever. Blah, 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 blah. Bullshit. Bullshit. It's extraterrestrial control, and it's coming to an end. And we're going to go through a growth spurt as a human race beyond anything in the last 50 million or 2 million years, beyond Atlantis, beyond everything. Because all the genetics and capability are in us, as the yogis prove in India, okay? Levitating and garnering all the siddhis, the powers of the mind that are latent in human beings, okay? All of these things are in us. And it's this constant slave life orchestrated for us by the fucking papacy and the Gregorian calendar and their time system, which a very clever acquaintance of mine in the past, he coined a phrase. I'm not going to name him, but I am going to give him credit because it's not my expression, okay? He called it the papal work schedule, okay? Now, obviously up here, I've broken free of the papal work schedule, and my intelligence has gone through the roof too. I've written 4 books in 5 years. Back in Canada, it would take me 5 years to do one book. And not because I was dumber in Canada, but it was about finding the time and finding the mental space. Okay, so I'd have to have X number of dollars in the bank, 20, 30 grand, and then take 6 months off, pay my bills, my rent, whatever it was, $1,500 a month in 2007, 2008, my internet, my food, and I'd have to say, okay, do I have enough money to pay my child support, to do everything I need to do, and write for 6 months? And then I would do it. But I would only get that short window of time, which began me thinking about how do I live free? And that led me to where I live now, and I live for free. I mean, I have to pay for stuff and buy food and fix my car and stuff, but by North American standards, you could pretty much say I live for free. Okay? So, by the way, George Bush Sr., who I believe is dead now, but I'm not sure, and Bob's not sure either, okay? These people have alliances that go deep. He could be off planet now. I'm not even half joking, okay? George Bush Sr. is the closest thing we've ever seen in our lifetimes to the behind-the-curtain power and the at-the-podium power at the same time. They usually separate them. Okay? So Joe Biden is at the podium power, which means he's a puppet, and the puppet master is behind the black curtain up on a ladder with the strings. Okay? Bush was behind the curtain and the podium at the same time. He's probably the highest-ranking member of this extraterrestrial affiliated cult on the planet ever to take leadership of a country. Okay, I could be wrong. I'm no expert in all this. The insiders know I'm not an insider, okay? But I think George Bush was pretty close. That's as close as you get to what's going on here. Let's get back to our buddy, okay? Because he's going to drop some shit here that'll just blow your mind. And by the way, The book he mentioned earlier by Jack Valet, I forget what it was called. I don't know. I have it. I have it downloaded here. Let me just check. I'm going to do that book for you guys after. That might be my next major project here. Actually, is doing that. I also have Jorjani's thesis book here, which we can also go through. And what I'll do is I'll read it in the afternoons, and then I have a copy of his thesis from Stony Brook University here, which is abstract of the dissertation, Prometheus and Atlas, Doctor of Philosophy, and then he gets into his metaphysical thesis here, and the other book. Oh, Contact. No, that's. Oh, here it is, Jack Valet. Yeah. This is called Messengers of Deception. Now, Jack Valet was way ahead of all of us, but he was actually so far ahead, nobody really had any idea what he was talking about. People are just catching up with Jack Valet now. Messengers of Deception. How all of this has been about trying to deceive us. Now, when I was writing The Light of Darkness, I wanted to get into this, and I'm speaking to those of you who've read the book. I'm sorry. My podcast, The Talamanca Review, is done by a writer. I write books, and there are times I'm going to reference the books, and if you haven't read them, you're going to kind of be out of the loop. And it's not because I'm trying to force you to buy my books or anything, but here it is, Light of Darkness. I'm just saving time, okay? And referencing something I've already done. For those of you who've read the book and remember the Worshipful Fuelers chapter, it's very curious what happened in the British takeover, okay? And it was a takeover. I mean, the plague hit, the fire of London hit. There was a lot of really bad luck that hit England at the same time. Right around the time, by the way, and, you know, I'm just connecting dots. Don't shoot the messenger, okay? Right around the time, they let the Jews back in, and the British Jews clearly were in communication with the Amsterdam Jews, and they locked in the Bank of England in 1684, with the Amsterdam Jews funding a proxy war for the crown against the Stuarts through Cromwell. Okay? This is the history of England in the 1600s. And smack dab in the middle of this, 1 year after the Great Fire of London, Milton comes out with Paradise Lost. Okay? An incredible, epic religious poem and full of spiritual detail. If you've ever had the ability or the time to read it, I highly recommend Milton's Paradise Lost. I use it as a kind of skeleton for the middle section of The Light of Darkness, okay? All right, let's get back to our boy now, because he's got some really heavy stuff to drop on us.
He thought he was a total creep, coming from out of the CIA. You know, he'd been former director of the CIA, and he's a 33rd degree Freemason. George Bush Sr. was 33rd degree Mason. And his grandfather was Hitler's financier in America, Prescott Bush. So Bush Sr., yes. Bush Sr., I think, is someone who literally has at some point sat down with these 7-foot-tall Nordic people and had policy planning conversations with them. I wouldn't be surprised at all. And so what Bramley found is that you had that kind of thing going on throughout human history with various elites in Sumer, in Greece, in Rome.
What leads you to believe that? What is the most convincing evidence for you that George Bush Sr. had meetings with Nordic beings?
I don't see why he wouldn't. I mean, if George Adamski is...
You don't see why he wouldn't.
Yeah, look, you know when David Grush came out and talked about all these reverse engineering efforts that are underway, right? Mm-hmm. One of the most interesting things that he said was that not all of these craft were retrieved from crash sites. Some of them were what they now call donations. Mm-hmm. Okay? Meaning there were cases where we have been handed intact craft. That's been confirmed by a number of people other than
But
David
when
Grush
when
right
they
now.
say donations, isn't he saying that these things would crash? Like they're so sophisticated and so advanced, they wouldn't crash by accident. They would crash them on purpose
Yeah.
to help like stimulate human society and stimulate our innovation. Like take this and see if you can figure it out.
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
I thought
think,
that's what he was saying.
No. There is no way in hell that a civilization that advanced would volunteer this kind of technology to any stratum of the U.S. government without an extremely detailed agreement having been reached. And that would have to have been negotiated by both sides.
But if
Okay, so let's get back into what I uniquely bring into to the table that I don't think Jorjani knows. He might. Maybe Joshua could let us know in the comments. But look, the trade was us. Okay? So what these negative extraterrestrials want is they want us. They want our genetics. They want our blood. They want our psychic energy. They want us as slaves. Okay? So this is what's really been going on. And remember, when you think about it, okay, everybody's down like Black Lives Matter and stuff like this when they get talking about, everything that happened and all of the slavery and everything. One thing that they conveniently leave out quite often is that there were black people in Africa rounding up the slaves and selling them to the white Europeans and the merchant marine ships, largely owned by Jews. Look, I'm not going to stop pointing this out. I'm not letting them get away with this shit because they've had their hand on this shit for centuries now, okay? And I'm not advocating anti-Semitism. The average Jew doesn't know what I'm telling you tonight. But at the core of this very dark and corrupt society, they know. And they're, clearly to have the kind of power that the Sanhedrin and the rabbinical circles have on this planet now, clearly they've made an alliance with an extraterrestrial group that offers them a modicum of protection. Okay? You may say, well, Bruce, what happened to that protection in the Holocaust? That's a whole other podcast, and quite frankly, I don't want to do that podcast. It's too controversial, so I'm just going to leave it alone, okay? But, so Bramley in The Gods of Eden documents this all, and he talks, and it's always the same thing. And he goes and he looks at official records from the past. Okay, court records, stuff like this. I did the same thing, writing The Light of Darkness. I found the official King's Court transcript of that resulted in the expulsion of the Jews in 1293, and you can find I might be scrubbed now, but 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 4.5 years ago, you could find it online. And it took place in 1293, and it was blood libel. Exactly what I reference in The Devil in Us with that book by Ariel Toth, the Jewish professor and the son of the head rabbi of Rome, who was ostracized and forced to recant by Israel and the Jewish lobby. But, I mean, that book, if you can find a copy of that, a PDF of that book online, Blood Passover by Ariel Toth, Toaff. Give it a read. Do your homework if you have the time. Okay? I realize not everybody has the time. And I do get that, okay? So if all you have to go on is me, and you're just watching my podcast and you're trusting what I'm saying, let me tell you, I am doing my homework. So you're in good hands, okay? I'm not leading you astray. I have no motive to lead you astray, okay? My motive is the emancipation of the human race from the dark forces that have had us in their grips for tens of thousands of years, maybe millions, maybe hundreds of thousands. I don't know, okay? I don't know. I mean, I got into that stuff a little bit in the Galactic Historian, but I don't really trust the source anymore, Andrew Bartzis, so I can't validate what he's saying. But at least the last few thousand years or so, we've just been absolutely steeped in this stuff, okay? There's absolutely no doubt about it. I'll finish this up tomorrow night. I'll open up the phone lines now. If anybody wants to call in, you can call in. It's 864-810-1039. And go ahead and do that. And we'll finish up with this Danny Jones podcast tomorrow, because a lot of really good stuff to get through again. I'm almost motivated to go through the Gods of Eden again on my show. I could probably do it in a couple weeks if I'm doing an hour a night and just hit the highlights. But you get the bulk of it in the Light of Darkness. And I think that in a lot of ways, I'm bringing something very unique to the table in these books, okay? And adding to all of the heroic work that's been done by other people as well. And I'm quite happy about that. Ari Shafir, it's funny you should bring that up. I was just listening to his Tucker Carlson podcast last night as I was going to sleep. So if anyone wants to call in, it's 864-810-1039 or Seen That Tinker 1 at Skype. I'll just talk for a couple more minutes, and if there are no calls, then I'm not going to go on much longer tonight. Well, it was quite the process to get Skype figured out. To make it work with OBS, you have to download this technology called NDI, and then you have to do a special setting in the Skype settings to allow NDI, and then you can talk with the person and have it come through your computer speakers, and OBS will pick it up without an echo and stream it and record it properly. Stardust Ranch, I'll finish it, but I mean, I went over a lot of it in The Devil in Us, okay? So I was actually going through the chapters, and Joshua was asking, what about Stardust Ranch? Am I going to finish Stardust Ranch? Yeah, I will finish. You're welcome, Feminem. I will finish it, and there's a lot more stuff to go through, like the... Yeah, okay, I will finish Stardust Ranch. Maybe I get a little distracted, but thanks, Mike. Yeah, so, I mean, basically what you get into in Stardust Ranch from the point I left off, it just gets really dark. John and Joyce start getting maimed, like waking up with brands on them and stuff, and it just gets really demonic. And then the house burns down. I'll go through it, though. Sure, I'll go through it, all right? But it's kind of boring for me. You got to understand, Joshua. I mean, that book's been in my life since, I started it in, June of 2019. It's been in my life 5 years now. And I mean, I've just done so many podcasts on it and everything. And to be honest, it doesn't need any help selling, man. I mean, it sells every month. Audiobook, paperback, and hardcover. I don't know what it is. I've written my Buckaroo Banzai, my Rocky Horror Picture Show. I've written my cult classic. That book, in terms of its royalties, is as consistent as a senior's pension. It comes in every month. Yeah, it's new to Rush. You haven't read it? Well, why don't you buy it and read it, for crying out loud? Can you want to support me, man? Buy the book. Fucking guy. But yeah, it is an interesting story, and John Edmonds is definitely a linchpin in this whole thing, especially as I speak about him since he passed, revealing that he was a first-generation super soldier. Okay, so he knew all this stuff. Okay, the super soldiers know all this stuff. Their conditioning is to allow them to be interfaces to these entities and stuff. That's part of their interface. Okay, so that's why when the ones that get out, and there's a lot of these people out there now pretending to be spiritual teachers and shamanic healers and stuff, and really they're just reformed super soldiers. Remember what I said. Satanic spirituality is psychic power. Okay? True spirituality is reliance on the divine. Okay? And not expecting any power and not garnering any power. Because to have a complete and open connection with the love of God, you can't have any power blocking it. So the psychic stuff is antithetical to spiritual growth. And this is a huge thing confusing a lot of people right now. A lot of people think, oh, they're psychic, they're so spiritual. Oh, they can tell me my past lives. They're so spiritual. Any fucking ET or dead human being can do that, tell you your past lives and all that shit. Like 5 minutes after you die, you'll have those powers. Don't worry about it. Worry about what you're supposed to be doing in the body, which is connecting with the divine. That's why the human life is given to you, not to grow psychic powers. That's the biggest red herring out there, growing psychic powers. All right, I think I'm going to end it tonight. And thanks for listening. That's a solid hour. Yeah, an hour on the dot, actually. Tomorrow night, I'm going to finish up with this podcast because there's some more stuff I want to finish. And then I'll get back to Stardust Ranch, okay? So we'll be back on Stardust Ranch by Friday, which is my birthday, by the way, July 12th. Orangeman's Day, which ties into this Worshipful Fuelers chapter in ways you can't imagine. I am so karmically connected to this material. It's unbelievable. So I am Bruce McDonald, and this has, in fact, been